Hey everyone, today I wanted to come on and talk to you guys about my type 1 diabetes diagnosis, how long ago it was, what happened, and things like that. I had a viewer request that, so I thought I would just take a moment to share that with you. If that's something you guys are interested in, keep watching. Okay, before I get started, I would just like to share my new cup. Drink up, witches. Loving it. Isn't that adorable? Adorable. Anyway, okay. So, let me take you back. When I was very young, I would say probably around 10 years old, I started getting sick. My mother, I have a grandfather, or had a great-grandfather actually. Nope, grandfather. Sorry. I didn't know him. He died before I was born, actually, I believe. And but he was a type 1 diabetic. He took shots, and I'm talking like the old kind of shots where you had to screw the needle onto the glass, plunger, all that kind of stuff. And he was a type 1 diabetic. So my mother was always terrified that we would become diabetic, so she always had us tested. Now, I say that to say this. We grew up in a very small Mississippi town. My doctor, whenever my mother would go in and have us tested, or I was sick and things like that, they wouldn't do blood tests, they would do urine tests. And anytime that they did that and my urine came back that it was, I had sugar in my urine, they would attribute it to, oh, she's sick, she has this, or oh, she's sick, she has that. So I was misdiagnosed for years, and as a result of that, the doctors, when I finally was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, said that it was a literal miracle that I was alive and did not have damage. But it probably around age 10 is when I actually started showing symptoms and signs that I was getting sick. Didn't really know what was kind of going on. I wouldn't say I was a sickly child, but I was sick. It would be weird things, and then I would have like trouble where I felt like I was having a heart attack or a stroke or something. My arm would go numb, all this kind of stuff. Things like that were happening. But again, grew up in a rural, small Mississippi town, and it was just not something that they tested for. It was, I wasn't necessarily overweight, I wasn't anything like that, and which with type 1 diabetes you don't necessarily, you can't fluctuate, like you can't actually gain weight. But normally you lose weight and things like that, and I did, but still, and I was very active. It wasn't, I wouldn't say I started starting to feel the effects until I was in high school. But again, I was never tested it properly, fasting, blood work, things like that. Now jump forward, I'm in college. I was dating, and I was always felt bad. I mean, it truly is a miracle. And my eyes are not a result of diabetes. When I was born, they had to use forceps on me. My mother it was a difficult birth, things like that. And so it applied pressure and it messed with the optical nerve and all that kind of stuff. So this has nothing to do with my diabetes. Thank you, Lord. Seriously, I mean, they said that my case was almost unfounded for me to have been diabetic as long as I had, a type 1 diabetic, to not have been misdiagnosed all those years, and then be diagnosed as a, still in my teenage, young adult, whatever, but I'd say around the age of 20. I mean, I had actually blew up like a balloon. I mean, it wasn't fat, I was slow. I mean, you couldn't even imagine. I was just so sick, and then, and I always peed a lot, so, and that my mother would always run me, go try to get me tested. Of course, it would be the pee sticks, and everything was different. I mean, not like I was born, in the beginning and making of the wheel. But I mean, when you're in a rural town, you know, you have to do with what you got. And I mean, my mother did the right things. It's just that, you know, there wasn't a lot of access to a lot of stuff. And but anyway, got really sick. And at the time, I was dating a guy who was going into the medical field, and he was like, I think you might be diabetic. I'm like, I'm not. And he goes, yeah, I think you might be. He's like, you're consuming large quantities of water. You're swollen. He was like, and you're peeing a lot. You're just sick. You look awful. He was like, you look awful. He goes, you know what I noticed when we first met, that not that you looked awful, you know what I'm saying, but he was like, that you looked, I don't know, it was just a look you had, and you know, the fact that you're, anyway, some other stuff. And I was like, no. Well, I went into a coma. Before I passed out and went to the coma, I can remember getting up, headed to the bathroom, and everything started to go dark. And that is the last thing I remember until, I would say 8 hours later. And I woke up, and they said that was a miracle too, that I woke up, that, you know, as high as my blood sugars were and things like that, the fact that I woke up, and that was God himself. That was what was, and at the time the boyfriend had been calling me and stuff. I mean, I didn't even hear the phone, you know, obviously, and I was in the bathroom and no cell phones, things like that. I was laying on the floor. Well, then I called him. He took me to the on-campus hospital, and they said that they immediately came in. They didn't even tell me, and gave me insulin, and that's how that started. And then I was sent to a specialist who was wonderful, and they did a bunch of tests, and they said, yeah, there was some, you know, they could see some damage, you know, through some of my blood work, but compared to how long, you know, that I was type 1 diabetic when I was young and was not diagnosed properly, that my pancreas produced almost zero, but just enough. And then I was active. I played sports. You know, I walked a lot because of school, things like that. I always felt bad, like always felt horrible. And they said it was a miracle that my eyes didn't get, you know, worse, even though they were already damaged from birth, that they didn't get any worse and things like that. They feel like that the fibromyalgia is probably one of the major consequences of not being diagnosed as a child when I should have been, you know, and things like that. But anyway, I mean, they couldn't believe I woke up. But, I mean, you know, and I still had no idea. I mean, you know, I was clueless until I went, you know, to the doctor, and they sent me to the specialist. And then probably within a year, I lost all of that swelling, everything like that. I mean, I was small, you know, and my pancreas was producing no insulin at all. And they said they didn't feel like it had produced a lot anyway. You know, even back when I was 10, you know, they said it just, but again, it was a miracle, because normally people don't. So I know how blessed I am. But probably within a year of my diagnosis, and that's when we realized I was a very brittle diabetic. You know, you had lots of times, especially when you start, you'll have like these honeymoon periods, things like that. My honeymoon period was weird. I mean, it was just weird. And even now, if you look at the amount of insulin I take, it's still not necessarily a whole bunch, but that's because my blood sugars, you know, it's not like they stay high all the time. They'll plummet and things like that, so I don't always require a crap ton of insulin. But that's about a year's when we figured it out. And of course, now they don't use the word brittle. You know, doctors even act like when you say brittle, they don't know what that means. And that aggravates the teetotal hell out of me. That's like calling somebody bipolar when they're manic depressive. just because bipolar sounds better, you don't want to call somebody manic depressive. Yeah, I used to work in mental health, so anyway. I'm a brittle diabetic. Everything affects my blood sugar goes up and down, and it made treatment very hard. Still to this day makes treatment hard. There are times when it's a lot better than others. He ran some more tests on me, and he said, that certain times of the day I was more sensitive. I didn't produce insulin, but my body was just more sensitive to insulin, and other times I was just very resistant. I have the Dawn phenomenon, which makes things interesting for sure. And I met another guy who has the Dawn phenomenon. That didn't, just because you're diabetic doesn't mean you'll have it. And I think it's more predominant in women because we produce more, hormones and things like that. And they did a bunch of tests and everything, and like my doctor said, I said, oh well, so he's like, no, you had it for a long time. And then I had my my records from when I was young sent to him, and he was like, yeah, this should have been diagnosed he goes, when you were around 10, probably earlier than that. He goes, but when you're around 10, they should have definitely known that this was, and I don't blame, I mean, this was, it's not anybody's fault. I mean, the doctors did what they tested. It's just, we didn't have a lot of things available there. And, and I can remember the shot that they gave me, all the insulin didn't absorb, and for probably 10 years, I had a knot right here of the very first shot I was ever given. And I can remember, I would dream about, because Mother would talk about my granddaddy being diabetic and having to give shots, and I would have nightmares about that as a little kid. Like, oh, I don't want to give shots in my stomach, oh my God, that's awful, it's awful, blah, 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 and then I end up getting it, or having it even then, as I'm dreaming about it, that's probably a sign. But, I don't have like this dramatic story other than I did go into a coma, and I didn't just pass out, I was literally in a coma. And when I woke up, then the guy I was dating at the time took me, my blood pressure was almost bottomed out. I couldn't breathe. It was, God, it was awful. And they said that it had to have been the good Lord, because by any other standards, anybody else would have never woken up, And so I just tell everybody, sometimes doctors, they do their best, but they make mistakes. And while my specialist said that my doctor should have known even without blood work, and even using the urine tests and stuff, but my mama did. My mama knew. She kept taking me back, and she's saying there's something wrong, there's something not right. And my mother had guilt for a long time after that. Like once I was finally diagnosed, and she just knew that I was going to be, completely, my inside of my body was going to be completely ruined, that it was, that I was going to have all these complications and things like that. And it's like I told her, I'm like, Mother, it's not your fault. You did what any mother was supposed to do, and you were going by what the doctors say. I said, we all know now that, and I think the doctor too was still, he was a family friend and doctor, so I don't think he was like trying to be negligent. He was just doing what he knew, and he was old then. He's dead now, but he was old then, and that's just kind of, just kind of how things go. So you can't blame yourself when things like that happen, and it was just by the grace of God that I didn't have more damage than what I did, and that I still don't. And I'm not sure exactly what all other tests that my specialist at the time did, and I really wish I had him. He was the best endocrinologist I've ever had. As I can say now, the one I have now is a damn Richard. Dick. Richard. He's not a little Richard, he's a big Richard. But like I said too, my appointment last was great. But of course, he's probably patting himself on the back thinking he did something and he didn't. I mean, sometimes you got to take crap into your own hands, and they're not all diabetics, and really, believe it or not, it's a small percentage of us who are super brittle, you know. And like with any diabetic, I mean, when you're sick, you'll feel bad, but I mean, it is a day. I don't have to be sick. I can laugh and my blood sugar will go nuts. I can frown. I can fart. I literally say that. I can fart and my blood sugar goes crazy, you know? So, and I'll tell you this, when I started on an insulin pump was probably about a year or so before I got pregnant with my son. And so I have been on an insulin pump 30 years. Yeah, I would say 30 years almost. You know, I think they're great. I mean, they are great. They're wonderful. And if you can, I advise you to do it. And I know here's the thing, I know a lot of type 2s are using it and using pumps and things like that, which is great. I mean, I think anything that can help anybody, but, you know, that's all we have. That's all we have is needles, insulin, you know. There is no cure. Our diet might help our health, but it's not going to help. It's not going to cure diabetes. It can't be reversed. You know, it's not going to cure our diabetes. So, so you know, it's the best we've got. So, but that's the gist of my story. I mean, there's nothing, you know, spectacular other than the miracle that I'm here. The miracle that I didn't die as a small child. Now, I did have several hospitalizations in my small hometown. Not really hospitalizations. I'd say I'd have to go to the hospital, but, you know, again, they would check my pee, and, you know, oh, well, she has this virus, or, oh, she's, you know, whatever. I mean, they never could explain the heart stuff, and that was the diabetes. I mean, like, my doctor's like, I can look through, my specialist like, I can look through here. This is when you should have been diagnosed, you know, at age 10. And it took them, 10 more years? 9 more years before I was actually diagnosed. So by all accounts, I should be dead, you know, and I almost did die, you know, going into a coma. So, I mean, I hope that explains a little bit. I know that's like not anything fancy about, you know, all these other people have, and sometimes they have all these dramatic stories and stuff. And there is a dramatic part of my story, but not, you know, but nothing will be normal with me. I'm not normal. I don't claim to be normal, you know. God knows. But, you know, and I would like to hear some of y'all's stories too, you know, if you have them. And it's just, you know, if you think there's something, don't just do a pee test. You know, even now, some doctors still just do that. Go and have the full gamut. It's just the best. And I will encourage you to every year go see the dentist, go see your eye doctor. Okay, those things are very important to diabetics. Your teeth, if you're not taking care of your teeth, that can actually affect your diabetes horribly. Things like that. So I encourage that. I do that. You know, people are like, I can't afford it. Save your money and do it. Your health is priceless. So, trust me, my husband and I have been dirt poor, and I would save up money, or I would sell stuff, and make sure I would go to the doctor. So, I totally get it. So it's not something I'm you know, trying to be a elitist bitch about or something like that. I know, you know, because I'm not. I came from a hard-working family. My husband and I worked hard, and so I totally understand about being tight on money, but you can't put a price on your health. So, and there are far more things that are less important than your health that you can get rid of. You can't take it with you when you go, so that's what I say. But Anyway, I hope y'all are doing good. I hope that just kind of gives you an idea, and I guess I will talk to you guys later. Yeah.